Nestled in the mountains of Floyd, a handful of workers at St. Pierre craft amazing pieces of furniture using reclaimed barnwood and uncommon cuts. The attention to detail and looking at the finished product brings us a real captivation, as the grain patterns in the wood keep your eyes in a fixed movement.
So I've been a woodworker my whole life. I started woodworking at a very young age up in northern Vermont. We live about 30 miles south of Canada as a kid, and back then in the early 80s, wasn't a lot to do, so I got kind of crafty with a skill saw and a jigsaw and stuff, and used to make birdhouses for a local country store that I would bring my little birdhouses down and sell them. During my high school years, I moved to southern Vermont, where I still took on the craft and had a small woodworking shop there in Westminster, Vermont. I had that for a couple of years. And then in 1999, we moved to Virginia. Always wanted to have a shop here, and we built our house. My goal was to have a woodworking shop, and in 2004, that dream came true. So we built a small shop here in Floyd, started doing a lot of things at the little craft shows and things like that, making cutting boards and doing, smaller projects to what I could handle, because at the time I still had a full-time job. I was coming home evenings and weekends and working in the shop. It has since progressed into a 5-employee business. We've built a new location, which is still on our property. We have 50 acres here on Kennedy School Road. We've moved the new shops down beside the road for easier access for customers and to get the logs and stuff too. So here in 2023, we're now, doing much larger jobs. We've gone from the $500 jobs to the 50,000 plus jobs. We still do a lot of smaller projects, but our main goal is the larger jobs for for homeowners and general contractors around the valley. And so we started as we became incorporated in, I believe, 2016. We started the business in Floyd in 2004 as an LLC. And then in 2017, we were featured on a few salvage dog shows, and that's when I had to quit my day job and start doing this full time. In 2017, we won Roanoke Chamber of Commerce Best New Small Business, which was pretty exciting for us. And between that and being on salvage dogs and different things that were happening at the time, it was time for me to start doing this full time. So we've been in business in Floyd for over 20 years. We've been a full-time business since 2017. And in 2017 is when we started hiring our first employees. And now we're up to, like I say, we're up to 6 employees total. I've always had a love for old buildings and old barns. Even as a young kid, playing in old barns like everyone, we have those memories of our grandparents' barn or something, that. And when I was in construction, we were doing a lot of these larger jobs. One of them happened to be in Meadows of Dan when we were putting the bypass around Meadows of Dan, and it was just a matter of, we were taking all these beautiful trees and they were basically being burned. That's when I decided there's got to be a way to save these old trees and save all this stuff and save all these buildings that were being torn down and repurpose it. So I bought a special sawmill that would saw logs up to 5 feet wide, and I started sawing and bought my Timber King in 2011, and I started sawing all these logs that weren't good enough to go to a sawmill. So what I found with that is I started this whole live edge thing in this area, and people started, at that time, people started buying slabs from us on a weekly basis. We were doing probably 20 to 30 slabs a week because we were the only one around doing it. I was getting the logs for free. Tree companies were bringing them to us. I was getting them from my job where I worked in construction in Roanoke for EC Pace, hauling them to my mill, sawing it. But then came the problem of, okay, now I have to store this wood and I have to dry it. So at that time, we bought a dry kiln. At this time, we have actually 2 dry kilns operating full time, and we're able to saw a log, have it milled, let it set for a few months, put it in the kiln, and we can generate the lumber quicker because we're able to dry it faster. And with the turnover we have in slabs, we definitely need a dry kiln. So we like to take these beautiful old yard trees, and that's what really the niche we have is we can take the tree. We can't take the tree down, but we can haul the tree in, whether it's off someone's old farm or off a building site. We can mill it, we can dry it, and we can turn it into whatever the homeowner or university or whomever wants. We have taken a lot of really unique trees out of Roanoke, trees with stories, and turned them into, say, conference tables. One was from Member One Bank that we took a special tree out of Elmwood Park about 5 years ago. We took the largest elm tree in Virginia down, which was on the Roanoke Country Club, and turned that into several different projects as well around Roanoke. And that's kind of cool when you can give a story with the piece of furniture that you're building. Yeah, and we also, we do take a lot of old barns down around Floyd, and that's always a sad thing for some people that have been driving up and down 221 or on these back roads, and they see these beautiful old barns in the morning with the sun and the fog, and it is beautiful. But unfortunately, those barns are usually either have to come down for a reason because they're going to build a new house or do something on the property, and they need that barn gone because they're just not functional anymore. They're not. The farmers can't use them, they're not even safe to put hay in anymore. So what's great is we're able to take that barn down, we're able to repurpose the wood. We do a lot of projects with reclaimed lumber. We sell a lot of fireplace mantles with the old logs. We've taken some houses down here in Floyd that date back to the late 1700s. And to be able to use that material and have a story, have a picture of the building is so unique versus that building just falling down and rotting out in the field, and then it's no good to nobody. Recently, I took a barn down that was my grandfather's barn up in Vermont, and we traveled to Vermont, made several trips back with that building. I was able to use most of that building on my own personal projects. We redid a cabin up on our property a few years ago, and also our showroom here at our shop was all reclaimed lumber from my grandfather's barn. So having those sentimental stories, and people usually when we take a barn down, we try to build them something out of the barn and give them something back, for the building. But that's always been a great, not having to run to the store or to the lumber yard and buy lumber for just anything. We use special wood and, for our projects. So, it's been amazing to see the whole thing revolve over the years, from being just me working after work, working on weekends, to building my shops up at the house, to turning something I love to do into a business here in Floyd, to be able to employ employees here in Floyd, and we all love what we do. I never thought it would get to this scale, but in this business, you have to either be able to do it all or it's going to be tough. That's why we have the sawmills, we have the dry kilns, we have the shops, we have all the tools to work with so that we can take, the tree all the way through. So doing what we've done, it hasn't come easy. I've had the best employees, which has made it easy for us. We've been lucky, to be able to just hire local Floyd County guys and gals, to help the business grow. So yeah, to sometimes sit back and look at it all and to see how much it's grown, It's pretty cool, especially to do it here in Floyd County.
Bill St. Pierre's experience in working with timber, old structures, and old trees has been coupled with a love of history. Speaking with Bill, he seems to have a story behind every joist, floorboard, and post. On one occasion, he found holes evenly and inexplicably drilled into a barn beam. After a lengthy investigation and research into why those holes were there, Bill discovered that the barn was disassembled during the Civil War, and while the timber was laying on the ground, soldiers used the timber as a defensive position and drilled holes for rifle stabilization. The timber was later collected and the barn was reassembled at a new location. It doesn't take long to spend time with Bill and know that he has 100 more stories to tell about the history to his pieces.
And you'd put the corn cobs down inside there, and it would actually take the kernels off the husks as you turned it. And they would come out of a thing and dump out into a bucket or whatever, a box, which too is from Floyd County. This old saw, it's a one-man buck saw, which is, they're around, but it's basically just a one-man buck saw that you can saw logs with, and this is a pretty cool find. Just all the different stuff that you find in these old barns. But I think this is probably one of the most important things I've ever found in a barn was this boat. I got my hands on that. I didn't realize what it was. They gave me the boat. They gave me the barn, told me to get rid of the boat, but I was like, oh, I'll keep the boat. It looks kind of cool. And I had no idea that it was a Harley-Davidson boat until I actually got it out. So that was a cool find on its original trailer. And the last time it was registered was in 1973, and the boat is a 1964 Tomahawk Arrow by Harley-Davidson. Yeah, so a lot of the things that we do are tables. I like tables because you can show off the whole slab. You can take a piece of wood versus cutting it all up into smaller pieces. The table we're building now, it comes into the the wood whiz, what we call a wood whiz, the wood whiz room. This is what they look like when they come in. They've been drying, they've been kiln dried, they've sat outside for a few months before they went into the kiln. And then we put them on this machine here, which makes them perfectly flat. So we need a flat surface to work with once it goes into the shop. This is a machine we bought about 3 or 4 years ago, and it has taken it to a whole new level as far as our large slabs, where we can take every slab that dries. It's going to have a little bit of a bow in it. Something's going to be not perfect with it. So once it leaves this machine here, the slab is totally flat and totally perfect. So once we get it flat, it'll go into the shop, the main shop. The guys will start checking for all the splits, like this one here. We use a special epoxy to pour in all the cracks, and we start filling it up with the epoxy first. Once the epoxy pour is done, we'll take and start sanding that slab down, seeing if there's any more small cracks that need to be poured, and then we start finalizing. In that process, we're building the base, and we're trying to get the base ready, whichever style base it has. In this case, it has what we call a Z-base. So we'll be doing the base and the top at the same time. We can usually put a table through here within a week, and that's just one employee working on that table. It usually takes 1 or 2 employees to help get it to the flattening stage, getting the epoxy poured, and then we turn it over to the woodworker to finish it off. There's a lot of sanding involved, and it gets to the final stage where we'll bring it into the spray booth and we'll spray it. Usually a couple of us will go over it and make sure that it's perfect. As far as the finish goes, it's always better to put a couple eyes on it, and we'll make sure there's no imperfections in it. And once everything's sprayed is when the table starts to go together. And then it's a happy day for the owner when we call them and say, we're ready to bring your table to you. Taking a tree from cutting it down to getting it here to the shop, to slabbing it or cutting it on the mill, to letting it set for a little while before we put it in the kiln. Depending on the thickness of the wood, with the kilns, we can usually do it within 4 to 5 months. Before the kilns, that would take well over 2 years to have that slab ready. And we will then put it in the dry kiln. Some of the wood we can take out, like I said, just within a couple months. But the whole process of from the tree to the kilns to the wood whiz to the shop, it's a safe bet to say about 4 to 5 months.
Very often in my work, I associate with people who have a love of passion for their work. And Bill obviously has that love and passion for his work. What does seem different is how his work has become integrated into his life, and the separation of the art from the artist has become almost indistinguishable.
I was born in Bellows Falls, Vermont, and I was at an antique store in New Hampshire last year and found this thing, and it was made in Bellows Falls, Vermont. Thought that was kind of cool. And when I was a kid, I was in an old barn, not a kid, but I was in my teens, and I found this can. It's separator oil, and it's the same company, Vermont Farm Machine, and they would use the separator oil in the butter churn. And then 35 years later, I find the butter churn. Isn't that cool?
That is really cool. So you went back up to Vermont and
I go up every year.
you go up every year.
We're actually going up next week. Yep.
While getting the tour around Bill's shop, he enlightened me further how St. Pierre came to be. Bill moved to Floyd in his 30s and bought land just off of Canada School Road. Working construction during the day, Bill would dedicate any spare time he had to building his home, his shop, and his business. Board by board, he finally built a home he could run a business out of, all by himself and all by hand. The day came where he would have to build a separate location for the business. Talking with Bill, it is obvious that the American dream is still alive, and chasing that dream involves a lot of sweat, determination, and faith.